Now in this video I want to tackle the meta title and meta description. At the moment, if we navigate through the pages, the meta title doesn't change at all. It's basically hard-coded onto the header. If we go back to our editor, first thing I want to do is if we go to the header, and first of all what I'm going to do is add the meta description tag as well, which we haven't done yet. So meta, and name is going to be description, and then for the content we are going to leave it blank for the time being. So we are now going to be working with these two tags, which should have a different content for each page. Now if we go back to the functions, what I'm going to do after the last function we had here, I'm going to create a new function called env for the environment, because this is what we're going to be using. We're going to be using environment superglobal to store our meta title and meta description, because the environment superglobal basically only works for the duration of a session, which means as long as this page is basically being executed, and then it's obviously removed from the server environment. Okay, so what I'm going to do is use two arguments for this one. The first one will be the key we're trying to get from the environment session, and then the second one will be the default value, which will equal to an empty string by default. Now, why do we actually use default? Because we could simply use get env, as we have already obviously tried in the previous videos, return whatever is associated with the key we're trying to get. The only problem with this is it doesn't give you an option to specify default value if the key does not exist. It only returns false, which obviously isn't the best result when you deal with things like meta description and meta title, which should have something. It cannot be just an empty string. So what we are going to do here is we're going to return this get env, but we are going to make it a condition. So question mark colon. So if the key evaluates to true, or not null in other words as well, then return it. Otherwise, what we want to do is return this default. So basically, we'll be able now to use this env in pretty much the same way as we would use the get env. The only difference with this one is that we will also be able to specify default key in case the key actually hasn't been, the value, sorry, in case the key actually hasn't been found within the environment session. Okay, so this is the function, the helper function we're going to be using here. The next one will be a simple function called set meta title, and we are going to use the title argument here. And within this function, what we are going to do, if I just scroll up a little bit, I don't know why I'm doing this additional space here, we are going to use put env, which we also discussed earlier, and we simply going to put the key and a value. So the key will be meta underscore title, and then equals, and the title will be the title sent through as a parameter. That's how we obviously, as you may remember, we are adding this environment variables obviously to our session. So put env, and then as a string, key equals value, basically. That's how it goes. So that's set meta title, and I'm going to copy this entire function because the next one will be set meta description. So description, we just rename it here, and then I'm going to rename this title to description. And obviously now, rather than setting another meta title, we are also changing this to meta description. So we have setters, we have set meta title and set meta description, which we'll be able to use from within these pages before we require the header. So we set them, and then within the header we need to be able to retrieve them. So if I just create a few new lines so we can see things better. Okay, so next function will be, rather than set, a get. So we now are going to create a couple of get functions. So function get meta title. And within this, again, I'm creating this unnecessary spaces here. Okay, return, and now we're using this helper function env. And what we're looking for, we want meta title. But if it does not exist, what we're going to do? What we are going to do is basically provide a default meta title. And to do it, let's go to our config file. What I'm going to do is copy one of these define blocks, and after the last constant. I'm going to paste it and rename it to meta title, which is going to be a default meta title. And the default meta title will say PHP course for beginners. Obviously, it doesn't have to be all caps, for beginners. And then now that we have meta title, let's do the same for the meta description. So we have default meta description in case one hasn't been specified. So meta description, and let's overwrite the defined one as well. PHP for beginners, say by Sebastian Sulinski. So this is going to be a default meta description and meta title. Obviously, make sure that you put it the way you need it for your system. You don't need, obviously, these precise strings there. Okay, so these are default. If you haven't specified meta title and description for a given page, use this. Okay, so now what we're going to use here, basically the second, as you may remember, if you scroll up, env takes the default string as a second argument in case the key cannot be found in the environment variable, as in environment collection, basically. So the default one I want to use for meta title is going to be our constant meta underscore title. There we go. So that's done. Next one, if I just copy this entire thing, paste it underneath, it's going to be get meta description. And obviously now we're looking for meta description. Make sure obviously these keys are matching to what you've used when you were setting them. So obviously meta title, meta description, meta description. And obviously default one I want to be meta description constant, which we've created just a moment ago. So that's pretty much everything about meta tags. Now let's put them into use. So if we go to the header section, our header partial, what we need to do is in between the opening and closing title tag, remove what we've got there at the moment. And let's start with the opening PHP tag and get meta title function. Obviously, this function returns a string, so we need to echo it in order to obviously be have it available actually and displayed in the browser. Then for the meta description, for the content attributes in between a double quote, rather than meta title, then get meta description, and that's everything we need to do. Now, if I go to, let's say, our index page, what we need to do inside of all of these pages now, if we just close this, sorry, move this require once lower down the line, we need to do set meta title, and now obviously we're passing in the string, single double quotes, and put some title tag. Let's say welcome to the fruit bowl, and then set meta description, welcome to the fruit bowl, your local fruit supplier. There we go. Now we can actually put a full stop at the end as well. If we save it now, preview it in a browser, look at what's gonna happen when we refresh the page. There we go. Our meta title is now showing in a tab, and if we view the page source, we have meta title, obviously the way we've set it up within the file, and then we have our meta description tag as well working fine. If we go to the About Us page, however, we get the default one from the constant. So if we preview the page source again, a meta title, a meta description come from the constant. So let's go to our About page as well. What I'm going to do is copy this entire thing. We go to the About and replace the require once header with now say about fruit bowl, and the same thing about fruit bowl, your local, that's fine. Let's keep it like this. Obviously, feel free to change it to wherever you wish. Now, if we copy the entire block, we can save it and close this about and index as well. We can also close this header for now. And let's go to contact page, replace this require once header as well with this. So contact, fruit bowl, same here, contact. Then we go for error. And let's do, oh, actually, we have to replace it, not paste it in. Okay, so contact, sorry, this is error. We should probably, rather than having this, put page not found and the exclamation mark, and the same for the description, page not found and the exclamation mark. error, then we have index. Let's replace index we've already done, sorry. And products, replace this header. And now fruit bowl, let's say products. Fruit bowl, say product range. And let's remove this, your local fruit supply, and a full stop again. So if we now save it, preview it in a browser, now we're on a About Us page. As you can see, it displays the meta title as well, fruit bowl products, contact us, everything works fine. If we preview the source, we've got meta description the way we set it, and the same, sorry, meta title and meta description. Now, one thing I want to tackle before we actually finish this video is the error page. When we say go to the contacts rather than contact, we get page not found. But let's quickly check what it actually returns. If we go to more tools again in Google Chrome, developer tools and network tab. If I refresh the page, you can see it renders this with the status code 200. What does the status code 200 means? It means okay, which means the page has rendered, that this page exists. Where in fact, we know that obviously this page does not exist. So what we need to do is to basically let whoever's accessing the page know that this page actually doesn't exist. That's not a page with a content, page not found. So let's say if someone accesses a bunch of pages that don't exist, they still get status 200, which is wrong. The status that should be displayed with the page not found is 404. So let's quickly go back to our editor and open our error page. So what we need to do before the set meta title and description is to use the header, and within the header we are going to type http://1.0/404 after the space, and then space again, not space found. And now if I save it and preview it in a browser, refresh the page now, you'll see we get 404. And if we expand it, you'll see we'll get status code 404 not found. And that tells search engines such as Google, for instance, that this actually is the wrong URL. This page doesn't exist. Make sure that it's not shown in the results because that's a non-existing resource.